Okay, great. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the Astro Teaching and Learning Conference. My name is Jill Johnson, and I will be your host for this session. I'm excited to introduce using multiple media formats to enhance teaching methods, presented by Dr. Rizza Bermio-Gonzalez, who is an assistant professor in the Department of General Education at Ashford University. Dr. Rizza has a master's in forensic psychology and a doctorate of psychology. And most of her research interests have been in the areas of post-traumatic stress disorder, hostage negotiations, juvenile delinquency, and student identity development. And I love that she believes in providing innovative, real-world education to her students. Without further ado, here's Rizza.
All right, thank you so much, Jill. Hello, everyone. My name is Rizza Bermio-Gonzalez. As Jill mentioned, I am an assistant professor in the Division of General Education, and I teach entry point courses. And those courses include Psychology 202, EXP 105, and Student Success Orientation. Today, my presentation is on how multimedia can be used effectively to enhance your teaching methods in the online classroom. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you some examples and basically so that you have an idea of possible uses that you might want to consider for your own classroom, and also discuss some previous research that's been done on the topic. We'll take a look at why using multimedia can be effective for our students in an online forum. And I hope that some of what you see today will be helpful for you. So I would at first like to start off with asking everyone how comfortable you are with using multimedia, and we're going to do a quick poll. Okay, great. Thank you so much for everybody that's responding. Okay, so I see, so we definitely have a good understanding of what multimedia is, and some of you use it pretty regularly, which is fantastic. Some of you might occasionally use it and be comfortable using it, and some of you might not be as comfortable. All right, great. Okay, I think we can close out of that poll. Thank you so much. Okay, great. Well, many of us might regularly use this type of technique in our classroom, but some of us might not necessarily think of why we use it and why it can be effective. So I have a few examples to share with you, and bear with me just a moment while I toggle between screens and so that I can share those examples with you. Okay, thank you so much for being patient with me while I switch between screens. So that was an example of a Voki. Vokis are great to use for announcements and emails. They can be effectively used in emails because it's a great way of just sending a quick link to one of your students and including that Voki in there, and it's a great way of sending a message. They're also great to use for checklists and due date reminders, just really fast messages that you want to get across to your students. I use them very often in announcements. And what's a really fun thing about using Voki is that you have the options of choosing different characters, you can use different backgrounds, and you can also, which is kind of cool, but I have not been quite brave enough to do this yet, you can also use your own voice in Voki using the microphone option. So there's several different options. Another great strategy is to use Voki Presenter, which allows you to combine a Voki character with a PowerPoint presentation, which is also a fantastic way of presenting a lesson. However, that requires a subscription, and I personally like to use the free option. So that's kind of what I'm going to be going over today, are those free options. So you input a script for the character to recite. As you can see, I had inputted that script for my little bulldog to recite to everyone. And once you create your Voki, you would then embed it into the classroom. And so you need to make sure to grab that embed code.
Rizza, are you still on the line? Rizza, can you hear me?
Everybody hear me okay?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not sure exactly what happened. For some reason, my audio is disconnected. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, great. I am too. Gosh, okay. So as I was mentioning, here's an example of that embed code, and that's what you would use to embed the announcement into either your discussion forums or your announcement box. And if you have any questions about embedding any of this into your classroom, there are really good examples, or there are really good tutorials in the Speedle. And at the end of the presentation, I'm just going to share a quick link of a gene that I created for anybody that is interested and would like a little bit of additional guidance. So here's an example of an announcement that I typically use with the Voki in the announcement. As you can see, I also include a transcript of what it says for students who may need to read the text rather than listen to it. So why use multimedia? How can using different types of technology contribute to retaining students? So certainly student retention in online instruction is one of our biggest challenges. And it's important to keep students engaged in order to help them be successful. Therefore, it's critical for us to figure out how we can keep students engaged in the classroom. Students who are engaged are motivated and they're persistent in the classroom. So we really need to figure out how to keep them engaged. And using multimedia is possibly one of those ways to do that. As you all know, multimedia refers to using multiple technological formats. And as online instructors, it's critical for us to consider the delivery of information. So how do we do this? How do we keep students motivated and engaged in the classroom? We teach in a text-based environment, and if students are looking at simply just text, their attention might be lost. So if all they're doing is reading materials, articles, things like that that we've presented to them, we could lose their attention. They're then not engaged and then possibly not motivated to persist. Effective online teaching focuses on processes of learning rather than outcomes. So we want to look at the processes. What are we doing to help guide our students to those outcomes? The delivery of information is really important to consider. How are concepts, assignment instructions, deadlines, how are all of those things communicated? And in a text-based environment, we don't have the benefit of building rapport face-to-face. We're not able to read facial expressions, and we're not able to look at body language. Therefore, students get a sense of our personalities through our electronic communication. And one way we can express our personality is, as well as deliver information in a more appealing way, is by using different tools such as these. So I'm going to talk a bit about psychological concepts here, and this is going to refer mainly to using audio and video, but getting the general idea of how multimedia can help students process information. It can help students learn information, and it aligns with the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. According to the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, we take in information through auditory and visual pathways. And if we primarily use just one method, that particular pathway could possibly become overloaded. So if we are presenting information through ways in which students can absorb that information using both pathways, this can maximize learning, which then results in meaningful learning because you're using both of those channels. Furthermore, learning that is meaningful is then more effectively encoded into long-term memory. If it's effective, it is also more effectively retrieved from long-term memory and then brought over back to the working memory to be applied in a process that we call retrieval. All right, so that was an example of a post. And those are great to use for announcements. You could also embed those in the discussion forums. I would be cautious about overusing things like that in the discussion forums, so be cautious of that. However, they're a really good way of providing brief lessons. And you also have the option of recording voiceovers. So you can use your own voice to deliver the content that you want to deliver. So you can almost deliver a brief lecture, so to speak. Some of the main concepts that you want to present for that week, you could put that into a Potune and record your voice over it. And so the students are getting a mini lecture within that week, and it can be a really great way of helping them to absorb that information. You can add, and that was a very basic one that I created, but you can add different objects, images, characters, and one thing that I think is really great about using Potunes is that you can add more information into multiple slides. So you can create a video that's a little bit longer and, again, use that for a mini lesson. And once you create it, you would make sure to grab that embed code so that you can embed it into the classroom. And one thing that I wanted to mention is that I think it's really helpful to embed these types of things into the classroom rather than simply just using the link. The reason why is because it can, once the student takes a look at it, it would be such a great way for them to just see it and and it would grab their attention. So I think it's helpful to grab the attention this way, and students can click on play directly. Okay. So here's an example of an announcement that I usually use, and I use this in EXP 105. I created basically a mini lesson on learning patterns, and so it was a really fun way to create that lesson and include that in the announcement. And for the week, this is the main topic that we're discussing for that week. One of the things that I think we can all agree is extremely critical is connecting with our students, and we think about how can we do this. According to research, students want instructors to care. So this includes instructor presence and engagement in the classroom. Technology helps establish that instructor presence. And as earlier indicated, technology is a great way for instructors to be creative, and it's a great way to express ourselves and let our personality shine through. Like I said, I enjoyed creating that lesson that I just showed you that I normally use in EXP 105. So it's really a great way to just express yourselves. And when you do that, students are able to sense that as well. Okay, so I have another video to share with you, and let's see if I can do this correctly so that you guys can hear the audio as well. Okay, so that was an example of an Animoto. That was an example that I've created, but I wanted to really quickly show you an example of the Animoto that I use in my classroom as part of, as I've been talking about expressing yourself and using these types of methods to be creative and really be able to do that. I wanted to show you guys the Animoto that I use in my Meet Your Instructor forum. Okay, Jill, are my examples, are those not coming across?
You know what, that last one did not come through, but you have provided it, so just looking at time, maybe they can access it.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. This will be recorded, this is shared and recorded, and it'll be shared, so yeah, you guys won't be able to see it later on. Okay, fantastic.
Thanks for letting us out, everyone.
Okay, and as I was saying, Animotos are great to use for announcements. You can embed them in discussion threads, so you can, because the free version is really short, they're basically 30-second videos, you can embed them in your discussion threads if you wanted to do that. But they're also a really great way of presenting something really, really brief, and you can use different images and different backgrounds, and also include different types of music in there. The free option has some limited options, of course. So if you wanted to pay for a subscription, there are ways to create something a bit longer. Yeah, there's some, absolutely agree, Debbie. There's some really, really neat ones. And there's one thing I like about Animoto is that you have several different music options. And I think using the music in the background is such a great way of just creating that tone, that really positive tone. And that's one of the things that I like about Animoto. So again, make sure that you grab that embed code. I have found that using Animotos, it's important to use the legacy embed code. For some reason, sometimes in eCollege, using just the embed code without clicking on that legacy embed code, the video may not pop up. No. Christy, I'm responding to your question, copying and pasting the actual embed codes that you would find when you click on embed within the website. Thank you, Jill. And here's an example of using it in a discussion forum. This is one that I used for the Ask Your Instructor forum to try to get students to be able to ask questions. Okay, and just to go over this really briefly, I'm coming towards the end of my time. I apologize about the technical issues. So using technology is such a great way to engage and motivate students. I'm just going to skip over to the next slide here. And it's a great way to appeal to multiple learning styles as well. So keep in mind, of course, as we all know, different students have different learning styles. And so sometimes perhaps, for example, that protein that I showed you all with that lesson on learning patterns, sometimes perhaps students may absorb information more effectively if you're using different methods to present that information. Here's a few different websites. Some of these require a subscription. The main ones that I usually use are the first 3 because I can access those for free. Sometimes I feel like those subscriptions are a little bit expensive. If anybody has any questions, though, about embedding anything, you need any help with that, please feel free to email me and let me know. So, of course, this presentation is going to be recorded and shared. However, if you are on the CETL and you'd like to see more examples, feel free to stop by our Side 202 CETL page. We have several examples loaded. The gene that I created which is basically a tutorial of embedding this type of stuff into announcements, that's on there as well. So you're welcome to stop by and check us out. Feel free to email me also. I'm more than happy to help anybody who has any questions about embedding into the classroom. All right. And I'm just at the end of my time.
Oh, thanks, Rizza. I was just trying to type in the text too, but anybody who wants to know how to embed the codes into announcements, discussions, there is a resource even available in the Faculty Resource Center, or you can talk to your Faculty Support and Development Associate. We have those resources also. But I do want to thank you so much for presenting this topic. We love seeing the multimedia and engagement with our students in this process through feedback and just communication. It's well received by them. We also want to thank all of you for attending and participating in Rizza's presentation. If you have a second, there is a survey right at the bottom of the Adobe room. You can go ahead and give some feedback on this presentation. You can also access the TLC app and rate the session. Use the link in the room for a quick end of session survey, and then we'll also be sending out a conference survey, hopefully getting some more of your feedback. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful